everyone, and welcome to the Lead Seat. My name is Dr. Marilyn Clark, and I am founder and president of Clark Consulting Group. Clark Consulting Group is a leadership development consulting firm. We also do career development coaching, corporate education, and executive coaching. Today, my guest is Jasmine Guy. She is a leader in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And Jasmine, I'd like to introduce you and tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you for having me today. I see myself as a bridge builder that sits between a company's operation and its growth opportunities. And in this capacity, I've enjoyed working with leaders across the business to really understand the direction of the organization, how each unit supports the vision, challenges, opportunities, and the organization's competitive edge. I bring to this body of work 15 years of experience in human resources, primarily focusing in on DE&I and talent management strategies. And I've had the opportunity of working with leaders across the organization to implement these strategies into their organizations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very interesting background. So Jasmine, when it comes to DEI, what motivated you to go into this field, and why is this work important to you personally?
Well, as I mentioned before, I have over 15 plus years experience in human resources, and I actually started my career in central human resources in a higher education environment. And in that capacity, it allowed me to understand a little bit more about the complexities of the workplace and some of the challenges that employees were having, as well as some of the challenges that leaders were having in the unprecedented challenges and times that we were facing and living in. And so I saw the opportunity as DEI as an opportunity to really focus in on improving workplace cultures, enhancing employee satisfaction, and really positioning the organization to provide innovative customer or client solutions. And so I saw this as the one area in HR that would really allow me to wrap my arms around those various different components. And why the work is important to me is it really focuses in on legacy and long-term impact. I aspire to leave a lasting legacy by contributing to the creation of more equitable and inclusive societies for future generations. And so I see this work as enabling me to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned leadership. I heard that come up as far as working with leaders when it comes to the DEI space. So when you think about leaders, what role does leadership should play in creating diverse and inclusive workplaces?
So leadership plays a critical role in creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. When our leaders prioritize DEI, they really set the tone for the entire organization, and they can positively impact the work environment. So I'll provide some key roles and strategies for leaders to effectively champion DEI efforts, just to get some ideas out there on this table. First, I would say it's really setting the tone. Leaders should articulate a clear commitment to DEI and truly model inclusive behaviors. Their words and actions should demonstrate the organization's dedication to creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace where all employees can learn, thrive, and grow together and bring out the best, more innovative solutions for our clients. Mm-hmm. Two, I would say resource allocation. Resources are necessary to really bring some change into organizations as it pertains to any of initiatives. And oftentimes DEI is one of those under-resourced initiatives within the organization. And so we have to make sure that our employee resource groups have the resource allocation that they need, the mentorship programs, and really support all the other various initiatives that really benefit diverse communities. Next, I would say also, listening and feedback, right? So maybe able to, create a channel for employees to be able to provide some feedback on DEI efforts. And so that's why, our employee resource groups are very critical in making sure that they have a voice at the table as well.
I'm curious, Jasmine. That was a mouthful, as far as things that leaders can do. So, can you give us some examples, like some hard examples of things that you have done in your career to move those initiatives forward? What would be some things, examples that you could share that you've done?
Sure. I would say in order to have systemic and lasting change, it really requires the organizations look at their policies, their procedures, and their practices, and really working with HR and other departments to really develop and implement inclusive policies and practices. So a couple of policies and practices that come to mind that I have able to either implement or modify in the workplace, one has to do with mental health and wellness. So now mental health is a component of DEI. And now that we're noticing more and more individuals having challenges as it pertains to mental health. And so it's important as organizations that we recognize that and we give our employees the time, the space, and the resources to really focus in on self. And so with that, working with leaders across the organization to provide mental health days for employees where employees do not have to say the reason as to why they're taking off work other than it's a mental health day and they're going to focus in on self. So that is a policy that I was able to socialize across the organization and be able to actually have it implemented as an example.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. When we think about the importance of DEI trends and emerging, because DEI has kind of grown and changed and evolved over the years. Back in the 1990s, when it was a new term, and it was a lot about acceptance and tolerance, but we've kind of moved further away into a deeper understanding of DEI. So that being said, what are some of the trends or issues that leaders should be aware of? Mental health, of course, would be one, and recognizing that, and maybe even stepping up to the employee and asking, do you need that? I could see that. But what are some other things, some other trends or emerging issues that are coming up today?
So other growing trends that I have noticed, one being neurodiversity. And really recognizing and accommodating neurodiversity in the workplace. And it really involves embracing employees with various different types of conditions. It could be autism, it could be ADHD, it could be dyslexia, and just really providing them the support and the resources that they need in order to thrive. And we're finding that millennials and younger generations are far more open about having these challenges and are really expecting organizations to step up to the plate, recognize it, and provide those resources and celebrate their diversity in that regard. So that's one growing trend that I'm seeing. Another being inclusive technology. Ensuring that technology and our digital platforms are accessible for all employees, whether it be for employees with disabilities and making sure there's web accessibility and making sure our websites are accessible and working with IT in that regard, making sure we're having inclusive design, making sure that our photos are inclusive and representative of our employees and the communities in which we serve, and making sure we have accessible communication tools. And then I would say last but not least, intersectionality, right? So it's important that organizations acknowledge that intersectionality does exist, and that, you have individuals who might come from varying identities. And it's important that, we are open to understanding what those complexities and what those challenges are, and then being able to address those unique needs and experiences of those individuals that come from multiple marginalized groups.
Okay. And when you say understand, what does that entail when it comes to intersexuality and understanding? What would that entail for a leader? What would they need to do?
It really entails understanding more about those communities, their challenges, how those individuals navigate the world, and how that uniqueness, how those different experiences impact their work and it impacts the way in which they work with others. And so therefore it requires, leaders to get to know their employees and providing them an environment where they're comfortable enough to share what some of those complexities are. And then it also requires doing some research on your own. We can't always lean on individuals from marginalized communities to do all of our education for us. So that means, being a part of these communities and interacting with these various different groups on a regular basis and being very intentional about it. And then also just doing our own research by reading people's stories. People are coming up with all types of great stories now in books that they talk about their identities. And so it's important that we read, we educate ourselves, and we immerse ourselves in other people's culture for understanding.
Mm-hmm. As I have another question along the lines of that, Jasmine, as a leader building my team, and when I am sourcing for members to join my team, either from outside or internally, what are some things that I need to look for and understand to be, in order to be, I would say, equitable and within that, the recruitment process?
So for me, it depends on the various different industries. So one of the industries that I really focused in on was legal. So probably the answer I'm going to give you kind of really focuses in on that. But one of the barriers in the legal community is looking at people's education and only wanting to recruit for individuals who went to some of the top law schools. And it's important for employers to understand what are some of the barriers for why certain groups necessarily did not graduate from those top law schools, and understanding that finances is, one aspect. And if you got a scholarship maybe to a second tier school, it was a full ride, you already had student loan debt from undergraduate, that would be a burden. And so for while other individuals, that might be a no-brainer, and they say, yes, I will go to that top tier law school, for other people, it could be about finances, and that could be a barrier for their entry into the organization. So it's important to be a little bit more mindful of what are some of the barriers for entry for some of these diverse communities, and why is it that it's a barrier, and how we can overlook that barrier and just say, you know what, if everyone has passed the bar, right, then that is a measure of success, and it shows the person is knowledgeable, and it really necessarily has nothing to do with what institution they attended.
Right. I can piggyback on that as well, because I have known through the years, because I did work in human resources for a number of years, that it really wasn't about necessarily the school, because you're right. Students have certain situations where you're right, they can't afford a top tier school, but a lot of times public schools, they have great teachers, and we find some real, stars that come out of those schools, both universities, law school, whatever, what have you, but they come out and they're really stars in their own right. But it was that I didn't go to a top tier school, but it was because maybe, like you said, for finances or whatever the reason might have been, but they still need to be embraced from the fact that they could be even maybe a bigger star than coming out of a top tier school. So that doesn't really equate to you having the knowledge or the background, having the knowledge that just because you went to a private school. So I totally can agree and understand that that would be a reason, definitely a reason to look at that, to think of it that way, and look at everyone individually, not based on the school that they went to, but basically, the knowledge that they took from whatever school they went to, the basis of their knowledge. The other thing I wanted to think, a lot of times when it comes to DEI, and this is interesting, we have some misconceptions and myths around it. I know a lot of times I get questions about, well, what is equity? Because people get a feeling, well, equity, it's, a spinoff of equal, and it's not, to me, not really necessarily meaning equal. To me, equity means accessibility and also accessibility and opportunity. So, what are some of the common misconceptions about DEI that a leader should address as towards organizational culture, towards their team, the vision, and how to dispel these misconceptions?
So a couple of myths come to mind. One is that DEI is a one-time initiative. The reality is DEI is an ongoing process that requires some sustained effort and commitment. And it's not just a check the box that can be marked and then forgotten. And so leaders should stress the need for long-term commitments to DEI with regular assessments, regular updates, and adjustments to the strategy, and be as transparent as possible and really stress that DEI is a journey and not a destination. Another myth is that DEI is an HR issue, or that is the DEI professional's responsibility. And the reality is that DEI is a strategic business imperative, and everyone throughout the organization should be involved, and it's everyone's responsibility from leadership to all employees. And it's not just the responsibility of the HR professional or the HR department. And so leaders should take some ownership of DEI and be really transparent about how they're walking the walk and talking the talk, and they should be actively engaged in it. And they can promote a culture where all employees feel responsible for creating an inclusive environment. And that's really critical. And then I would say, last but not least, DEI is about being politically correct. Like, that is also a myth. DEI is truly about creating a fair, just, and respectful workplace where people can be their true, authentic selves, and not about political correctness. And in order to address it, leaders can stress the human and business benefits of DEI, focusing on values like respect, empathy, and fairness. And they should create a culture where open and respectful dialogue is encouraged.
Okay. When I have thinking about, are there any things that you could suggest that a leader could do to learn more about DEI outside of the organization? And in other words, what I mean, instead of depending on the organization to educate me, what are some things that a leader could do outside the organization to personally educate themselves?
Sure. Some things that leaders can do outside of the organization to educate themselves is, one, join diverse organizations. A lot of diverse organizations, professional organizations, they're looking for allies to learn and to grow with them. And so that is one way of joining those organizations, becoming active on committees. And I find that once you join committees, you become active, you learn more about those communities and those individuals' lived experiences, and learning about some actionable things that you can do as an ally. Two, I think it's, mentorship and finding mentoring opportunities outside of work. And so a lot of professional organizations or alumni associations, they're looking for mentors. And so it's a way to give back to someone and pour into them, but you're also able to learn from their lived experiences as well. And then also, I would say, attend conferences, read books, listen to podcasts. Those are also some ways to get involved, to be able to educate yourself and being able to learn a little bit more about DEI.
Okay. Jasmine, is there anything that I haven't asked or that you would like to share when it comes to leadership and DEI?
Sure. I would just say that it is a long-lasting commitment. And so don't give up. Just like anything, it's going to take lots of work. It's going to take lots of dedication. We're going to make missteps, and that's okay. It's important that we are transparent about what our missteps are, but more importantly, how we have overcome them and understanding the benefits of being able to be transparent, being vulnerable, sharing those mistakes, but also showing what our small wins are, what our long-lasting wins are, and where we are on the journey.
Okay. Well, Jasmine, I want to thank you for coming to the lead seat today and sharing your opinions, your experience. It's very extensive. The work that you do is very necessary and needed, and it is a continuing journey for sure. So thank you for coming.